How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to episode 3 of Killmark Collectors. I'm Brandon, and today we are once again going to be talking about fleet ops. This is the third episode out of 4, and today we're going to be actually getting into the action, which I'm really excited about because it's been a lot of back office and paperwork, and nobody likes paperwork. But today we're going to be focusing on actually getting into the fight, getting out there, being able to understand some of the different commands, procedures, all that fun stuff. I know we talked about it a little bit in the last video, but today we're actually going to start putting it into practice. So let's undock and get started. When you first set up for a fleet op, there's going to be a couple of things that you need to do before you actually leave the station. Now, first is that you need to be on voice comms. This is absolutely critical because in the middle of a fight, whether it's because of disconnects or just people are busy actually fighting, you're likely not going to be able to see what's going on in a chat. So even if you can only listen, it's really, really important that you join whatever voice comms are available to your fleet. Once you've joined those voice comms, your fleet commander should be announcing a fit. Typically, it's going to be strike or brawler fit, but either way, be listening to that and apply it in the station as needed. You'll also want to make sure that if you're running any kind of group reps, whether it's shield, armor, whatever, that you're putting fuel into your ship regardless of what type of ship you have. Now, usually if we're running group reps, I typically say about 250 to 400, depending on how long or how big of a battle we're expecting to have. But ultimately, that's going to be a decision that you're going to have to kind of make based off of experience. I will say that as much as it sucks to burn extra plasmoids or anything like that, it's always better to have them and not need them to need them and not have them. Because, again, it's a lot cheaper to replace plasmoids than a ship. But that's just me. The other thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and start getting organized into fleets. You'll likely be asked to X up in a specific channel. All this means is that you literally go into the channel and type X. Somebody will see you. They'll be able to send you a fleet invite. I know that sounds super complicated and really, really difficult, but hopefully you'll be able to figure it out. All right, so once you've done that, you'll typically undock. You'll go to a specific planet or celestial, something like that, so that the fleet commander can actually get a sense of what the size of the different fleets are going to be. Now, NetEase has promised us that we'll get the 50-man fleet soon, so this may be a little bit unnecessary, but it is going to still play some part just so that people know that they're ready as opposed to just in the fleet. Once you get to the planet, the other thing that you want to do is go ahead and sort your overview. We talked about this a little bit in the first episode, but it's really important that if you are told to sort by names instead of distances, that you do that so that you're making sure that you're targeting the right people and you're not warping to different planets or belts or anything like that if you're not supposed to. In the last video, we talked a little bit about the jargon and some of the fleet commands that you'll likely hear as you're moving towards your objective. Now, I'm not going to cover them again here, so if you need, go back, look at I think it's actually this one. Look at this one, and you'll be able to see exactly what some of those commands are. Now, as we start getting onto grid and understanding what we need to do, there is kind of a mental checklist that you should be doing. First is to always find your anchor. Again, in the current meta, we're using bubblers a lot, so make sure that you're getting into that bubble, that you're staying there, and that if you're using a fleet command to do that initial approach, you are going back and using that manual approach command. The fleet command will expire, you will be out of the bubble, and you will die. As we start fighting, a couple of other things to keep in mind. It is going to be difficult to find targets, especially in big fights, but do your best. Again, having that overview sorted should help tremendously, being able to find the targets and focus fire them as the fleet commander says. Typically, you're going to be focusing Logi pilots first, so think scythes. Then you're going to be going guardians or high-value targets. Either way, just be keeping an ear out. A lot of times it's going to depend on the situation, but that's generally my experience, what people have called out first. If you're in the middle of a fight and you can't find the targets that you're looking for, don't just sit and try to scroll through and keep looking. It's better to be shooting at the wrong target than to not be shooting at any targets. If you just are searching for the right target, you're never going to actually apply any DPS. So just go ahead and shoot. It'll be fine. Probably. I mean, what's the worst that happens? You blow somebody up? I mean, as long as it's not blue, yeah, that's fine. In small ship combats, let's say you're doing a gate or a gate camp or something like that, the one other important thing here is not to loot unless the FCs tell you to. A lot of times, the way we make money in this game is by team activities and splitting loot. So if you have a single person that's collecting that and then divvying it up so that everybody gets their fair share, if you go and start looting stuff, it can make things a little bit difficult. And then finally, and this is probably the most important thing, is to just, again, be listening for prop mod calls. The last thing you want to do is have everybody else 10, 15, 20 kilometers ahead of you because they have hit their micro warp drives while you are still just puttering along at normal speed. With that, again, 99% of the time, you are going to be using a micro warp drive, not an afterburner. So just make sure that that's fit. Please, for the love of all that's good and holy, don't be that guy that brings an AB to an MWD fight. Once we're in, a couple of other things to keep in mind. First, if you are a interdictor pilot, don't drop a bubble unless you're told to. One of the biggest reasons that fleets get absolutely obliterated is because the fleet composition itself gets disrupted by an interdictor bubble. Some of them might get through because they were aligned differently or they engaged their warp drives ahead of time before the bubble was dropped. It's really important, whether it's an offensive or defensive operation, that you're only dropping bubbles when you're told to. Now, the other thing that's important that you need to be aware of is that as an interdictor pilot, you are also likely going to be one of the first targets because of your ability to disrupt the communications. Not the communications. Because of your ability to disrupt the enemy formations, a lot of times you are also going to be one of the first targets. So if you drop a bubble, try to burn out of that bubble as quickly as possible so that you can then warp out if you need to. Real life obviously comes first. This is a game. We all know that. Although some people may be more obsessed with it than others, and my fiance doesn't have to hear this because she probably would lean on the side of I'm obsessed, but it's fine. If you are coming to a fleet op late because of something else, regardless of what it is, you need to make sure that you're catching up to the fleet in something that's small and fast. We don't want you bringing a giant battleship because a lot of times there are going to be enemies that are looking to pick off stragglers or other high-value targets that are lagging behind the main fleet where they're relatively defenseless. So if you're, even 2 or 3 jumps behind when you start, go ahead and just grab a small ship, bring a tackle, bring an interceptor, and get to the fleet with that small ship as quickly as possible. I've mentioned disconnects a couple of times, and I think it is important to go ahead and walk through my procedures for how I handle this. Now, this is obviously my own opinion. There are other people that probably would handle things differently. But when I'm in a big fight and I disconnect, I do a couple of things. First, if the game doesn't immediately put me back into space, I go ahead and I do a hard close of my game client. It takes a little bit more time, but I found that it just clears out the cache or whatever is going on, and I can get back on grid a little bit faster and typically stay on grid a little bit longer after that point. Once I'm back in, I do a quick assessment to see where the game has put me. It may have warped me into a completely safe spot, which is fine, or it may have left me on grid. If it left me on grid and I, for whatever reason, am not dead, then what you need to do is you need to be able to quickly assess where you are in relation to the rest of the fleet. If you're in the bubble still, awesome. You're good to go. Don't really need to do anything other than go ahead and find the anchor and hit that approach command again. If you're not in the bubble, I recommend you look at a couple of things. If you are less than 15 kilometers from the anchor, then go ahead and try to approach and get inside the bubble. You should be able to hit your prop mod and catch up quickly, but if you're more than 15 kilometers, I wouldn't recommend doing this because a lot of times between the time that you've already spent being disconnected and the time that it will take you to catch up, you're likely going to give the enemies a window of opportunity to find and kill you. So if you're more than 15 kilometers off, I would find the closest celestial that you are already aligned to and hit warp as quickly as possible. Get out of there. You can always warp back to one of your fleet mates and get much closer to where you need to be, but if you try to just catch up, again, you're just leaving yourself exposed in space. And then finally, once you do end up getting in, X up, find a fleet. Hopefully with the 50-man fleets, they will allow us to stay in those fleets even if we disconnect, but that's been only on the test server. Hopefully it carries over into real life. In summary, if you get disconnected, hard close your client, see where you are on grid. If you are 15 kilometers or less, burn to the anchor or burn to the bubble. If you are 15 kilometers or more, go ahead and warp off. And then once you're in the bubble, manually reapproach the anchor and go ahead and start pew-pewing again. All right, everybody, that's it for episode 3. Once again, appreciate the time. So homework this week is really simple. Go out and do it. Doesn't have to be a huge fleet op. It can be, but if you want, even just grab 3 or 4 people. Again, if you're looking for a corp that does this on a pretty regular basis, hit the Discord link below. Shameless plug. As a member of the Silent Alliance, we do a lot of these fleet type of ops. So if it sounds interesting, come join us. We're always looking for active pilots. If you would, do me a favor, hit subscribe right down there. I think I'm finally getting a hang of this. It's kind of nice. Hit subscribe, ding the little bell, and you'll be notified of when the next video drops. So thanks for joining. Until next week, fly safe.